Unlike 3ds Max standard and photometric lights, the Arnold native light is modular. Using a mechanism known as light filters, we can stack parameters in the Arnold light and extend its functionality. And the Arnold light filters are implemented in 3ds Max as modifiers. Let's see what this looks like without any modifier first. I've got an Arnold light here that's configured as a spotlight. I'll select it. Go over to the Modify panel just to point out that it is using the type spot. And the relevant parameters here are the cone angle, which corresponds to the 3ds Max fall-off radius, or the outer circle here. And the penumbra angle, which is the size of the hotspot in the center here. With a high penumbra angle, we're going to get a very soft edge to the light. Let's do an active shade render. I'll select the physical camera and click on Active Shade. It's pre-configured for Arnold. And we've got our soft penumbra edge on that spotlight. But notice how the back wall is overlit. It's actually brighter than the subject. The surface on the back wall is rendering more brightly because the material is actually brighter. And the light is very far away. And although the Arnold light is set up to obey the inverse square law, or quadratic decay by default, because the light is so far away, we're not really getting any decay between the subject and the back wall. But we can introduce decay using a light filter for a theatrical effect. I'll select that light once again. And over in the Modify panel, in the modifier list, I'll choose Arnold Decay Filter. And that applies a modifier onto the Arnold light. And it works just like attenuation or decay with other lights in 3ds Max. We've got the far attenuation here. Let's enable that, turn it on, and also enable show. Right now we get a black screen because the far start and far end are both set to 0. The far start is where the decay will begin, and the far end is where the decay will be complete, and that's where the light will dim out to 0 illumination. We need to extend that far end amount. I'm going to increase that up to a value of 100. And now we see a little line in our left viewport. And in the perspective view, if we get in closer here, we can see that disk that represents the far distance. And unfortunately, this value is hardwired in inches. Even though my current units are meters, I have to enter this value in inches. Okay, so I'm going to extend that far end. Just click on that spinner and drag upward. And you can see it's moving, but we need to really get it over there quickly. So I'm just going to type in a value here. Give it a far end value of 350. Now we've got a little bit of illumination on that subject. The light is decaying from full intensity here at the light's icon or gizmo, and it's fading out to an intensity of 0 by the time it reaches 350 inches away. I'll also want to increase the far start. And if I want the subject to be fully illuminated as if it were right next to that light, then I want a very high far start here. Let's give it a value of 300. And go over here to our perspective view and orbit around a little bit. And our far start, where the attenuation begins, is right up close onto our subject. And the far end value, where it fades out to 0, is just behind that wall. And we can see it here in the left view too. So that's where the decay begins, and it fades out to nothing by this distance. And we can see how that back wall is darker, and we can brighten that up a little bit if we want. So we can set that far end value to a greater distance, let's say 380, and now you can see it's brighter. If we want it to be darker, we want to move this far end distance closer. Let's give that a value of 340. And now we see a dramatic theatrical effect in which the subject or sculpture is fully illuminated, but the back wall is quite a lot dimmer. And that's just one of the filters available for Arnold lights.